Okay, as people are entering the Zoom room for the event tonight, I'm going to welcome everybody again to Columbia Cottage. We're in Columbia Park in North Portland in the Portsmouth neighborhood. My name is Rachel Burton, and I'm the president of Friends of Columbia Park. Again, we're here in Columbia Cottage that was built in 1940. It's one of the amenities in Columbia Park that many of us help steward along with the city of Portland. Friends of Columbia Park is a stewardship group, and we ensure that Columbia Park is Portland's cherished outdoor hub for the well-being of current and future generations through advocacy, stewardship, and programming. Programming like we're having tonight. Thanks to Representative Travis Nelson for coming to the cottage tonight to talk to us. Yes, about a recent win he had for our community. Related to a North Portland Aquatic Center. And we'll hear about that in just a few minutes. I am going to say a few things by way of welcome. We've been holding a speaker series here in Columbia Cottage called the Good Parks Series. Tonight, this is a little bit of a different thing, and we feel very blessed to have such a leader in our presence. But the speaker series that I just mentioned was really to celebrate Frederick Law Olmsted, who was kind of the founder of parks in the United States as a landscape architect. And it's the 200-year anniversary of Frederick Law Olmsted. So we've had three events that were part of this Good Parks series, January, February, and March. And then we're adding this extra because it's very timely that we have some news to talk about Columbia Pool. If you are interested in hearing more about the Good Park series, visit Friends of Columbia Park website. We recorded each of the three events that have happened so far, and you can re-listen to those by visiting focp.org. This is the first go that we've had at a lecture series and hosting an event like we are tonight. So thank you for all of your support, for coming out to listen, for giving us feedback about how we're doing. It's been a big lift and quite a technological challenge for a group like ours, which is all volunteer, run by a super duper board of directors, including Greg Dilks, who I mentioned earlier, Mary England, John Flannery, Haley Pickus, Jeff Hale, Rebecca Small. We're a very vibrant group. And if you're interested in getting more involved, let me or Greg know tonight or email us. We're in kind of a transition time, and we're always looking for more community leaders to help steward Columbia Park. We're working on details to add another event to the speaker series, and director Adina Long from Parks and Rec, and then also the director of Parks and Nature from Metro Regional Government, Jonathan Blasher. They will join us on June 8th to talk about their experience as leaders of color in the parks and nature and parks and recreation environment. So look on our website to learn more details about that June 8th event that's coming up. Again, we're really excited that you're supporting Friends of Columbia Park. If you're not already a friend of Columbia Park, it's simple and easy to join, free and easy to join Friends of Columbia Park. Go to our website and do that. We anticipate we'll be here for about an hour, maybe a little longer tonight. If you're here in the room, use the bathrooms that are down the hallway behind you. Not the ones over this way. We don't want you to trip over cords. And I'm just going to do one check before I go to my next piece. And I want to make sure, Angie, is everything okay from the tech end? Okay, great. So welcome to everybody from Zoom land. Before I introduce Representative Nelson, one thing that I've been doing as part of the speaker series is reading a land acknowledgement. And some of you may be familiar with that. If you're not, it's something for folks like me or others, or really any of us who are living on the land that we're on right now that was taken from native folks. So I've read we don't have a land acknowledgement from Friends of Columbia Park, but I've been reading others that I've found. One from the Portland Parks Foundation, one from Multnomah County, and the one I'm going to read tonight is from the Port of Portland. So we acknowledge that we are located on the lands that have been occupied and stewarded since time immemorial by people from the bands of the Cascade, the Chinook, Clackamas, Cowlitz, Kalapuya, Kathlamet, Molalla, Multnomah, Tualatin, and Wasco. Many other Indigenous peoples have their homes in and travel through, harvest, and use the plentiful natural resources of the Columbia River, the Willamette River, and the other lands and waters within the Port of Portland's district. The Port of Portland and we respect the history of the federally recognized sovereign tribal nations of the Northwest, whose people were forcibly dispossessed and removed from their homes and their lands by the United States government following treaties entered into between 1851 and 1855. And we are committed to recognizing the ongoing relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and these places that we are in right now. So Friends of Columbia Park stands with the Port of Portland and many others who acknowledge that trauma, that past trauma. So thanks for listening to that. Thanks for being here tonight. And I am going to get to the meat of the matter, if you will. Oregon State Representative Travis Nelson, who's with us tonight, is a Democrat and represents, well, I'm not going to say all of us because I'm not sure where you are, but District 44, where we are right now, which encompasses North and Northeast Portland from the airport to St. John's Peninsula. Travis is one of the newest state lawmakers from Portland, named representative for House District 44, again, to fill the vacancy from former House Speaker Tina Kotek. And he has achieved at least one recent win for this district in the short legislative session that just won, which we are all here to hear about tonight. Representative Nelson led the charge along with Senator Lou Frederick, and our legislators voted to approve $15 million in lottery bond funding to help fund and build a new aquatic center in North Portland. Our community is really the only major part of the city of Portland without access to a city pool within a 3-mile radius. Now, Representative Nelson proposed the funding during this short session under Senate Bill 5702. And the bill passed both the House and the Senate, and I believe is still awaiting the governor's signature, but I'm not totally sure about that, and maybe we'll hear. So in addition to this fantastic and really recent win, Representative Nelson is also a registered nurse who also was previously a labor leader in his nursing profession, and more recently an advocate for medical workers on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. He served as co-chair of the Oregon delegation to the 2020 Democratic National Convention and is the first Black lawmaker in Oregon to identify as a member of the LGBTQ+ community. Representative Nelson is also a fierce advocate for healthcare reform, which some of us I know is at the heart of a lot of what we do, for workers, for climate change mitigation, for real affordable housing, and homeless solutions, equity, and many more. So with that, we are so lucky to have Representative Nelson with us tonight. And I welcome you. Please come up and let's just welcome Travis.
Thank you so much. Are we doing mics on, or masks on, or masks off if you're talking? Masks off are okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction, and thank you so much, Friends of Columbia Park, for having me this evening. The short session was just under 35 days, and I was appointed at 7:30. The session started at 8 a.m. and and I immediately got to work and also did a lot of drinking from the fire hose. I came into the short session with the request, my budget request being $33 million for this pool to bridge the budget gap. And some folks said I was reaching for a freshman, but I knew how important this was in making this request. And I'm happy that we were able to come away with $15 million of the $33 million request. So I'll get to my remarks now. I'm honored to be here tonight to talk about the funding we were able to secure for the new Aquatic Center during the 2022 legislative session. I was sworn in on the first day of session and immediately made getting funding for aquatic access in North Portland a priority. I was involved with the Save Columbia Pool group peripherally, and I knew how important it is to the community to have indoor aquatic access after Columbia Pool was closed. Columbia Pool is an important asset for this community. Columbia Park as a whole serves many in the community as a place of gathering, sport, and outdoor activity. And this series focuses on how the design of parks can be a benefit to the community. Columbia Park offers playgrounds, walking trails, sports fields, and before Columbia Pool closed, it offered year-round indoor aquatic access. We now need to fill the gap created by Columbia Pool's closing. With the $15 million in lottery funds from the 22 legislative session, I believe we will have an opportunity to bring this resource back. We need year-round access to aquatic services in this area because we know that Black and brown children drown at disproportionate rates. This community is one of the most diverse communities in Portland, and our children deserve the same access as other parts of Portland. You can clap for that. The funding from the state is an important step in getting the aquatic access as soon as possible. This funding must be spent down in 3 years after it's allocated to Portland Parks and Recreation, and these funds will go to the city in March or April of 2023. The city will be starting a robust community outreach starting in the next few weeks, and I'm committed to making sure that the community is heard as the city moves forward with their planning. The city will be publishing a website with information on the site, doing tabling events, meeting with stakeholders, sending direct mailers to folks, in a 3-mile radius of the pool, and engaging directly with folks in the park with a tabling event in April. As you may have heard, there are 3 locations that the city is interested in, but the project is not limited to these 3 sites. Portland Parks and Recreation will be gathering input from community on the full inventory of possible locations in North Portland. Information gathered from this outreach will be used to determine the final location. I will be following this process closely to make sure that folks in the community are heard. The pool will be in our community and we will have a say in where it is located. Part of the good parks design should be reflective of the community's wants and needs. And we will have the opportunity to have a say at a new location based on what the community needs. I look forward to continued engagement on this project, and I know there are questions about what will be done with the current Columbia Pool. The city will be asking the community for input on how they should be spending the $1.5 million that was allocated for interim access to aquatic services in North Portland. This is another opportunity for folks in the community to give direct feedback to Portland Parks and Recreation on how we would like to see these funds spent. I am committed to following this process to ensure that the community voices are heard. I will also be engaging with the city on their plan to bridge the last of the funding gap for this project. As you know, the total cost for the new aquatic center is projected to be $50 million. Portland Parks and Recreation has already allocated over $11 million from their system development charges, but we still have a gap of $23.3 million. The city will be looking at other funding sources to fill this gap, and I personally welcome any feedback from the community if you have ideas on additional funding for this site. I'll be holding a joint town hall with Senator Frederick and Representative Sanchez on May 7th at 10 a.m. at Roosevelt High School gym. The city will be there with a table about this project, and I encourage you all to attend as you are able. I look forward to engaging more in this project in the future and being a partner with the community to best optimize the space we have in our parks to meet the community's needs. I will close with a thank you to everyone who signed on in support of the letter that I believe made a huge difference in getting these funds. I will also like to thank all of my colleagues in the House and Senate who signed on in support of the letter. A special thank you to Representative Maxine Dexter, who sent out the community letter of support. Lastly, I'd like to thank Friends of Columbia Park and the Portsmouth Neighborhood Association for spreading the word on our support letter and hosting this wonderful event this evening. I look forward to working with everyone as we move forward on securing year-round indoor aquatic access for the people of North Portland. Thank you very much.
So at this point, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Representative Nelson. I imagine that a lot of us have questions or comments either for Representative Nelson on some of the news that he just shared. And so I imagine also online there are questions. And what I'd like to do is just help facilitate those questions from in the room, questions from online. And in addition to Representative Nelson being able to say more or answer questions, we have Robin Johnson from the city of Portland, who is the capital project manager. So Robin might also be able to answer some questions that folks have tonight. So with that, Mary Margaret, would you like to come up and say something? And I'm just going to welcome Mary Margaret Weber Wheeler from the Portsmouth Neighborhood Association, who just came from her Neighborhood Association meeting. And she was going to introduce Representative Nelson, but I think there's some other important things to say. So,
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure, and I apologize for being late. I think with the internet, we think we can multitask a lot more than we actually can. So I just really wanted to be sure that I express my gratitude to Representative Nelson and just kind of share what I had seen of his work. And then we can get to the hard questions and give the city a hard time because that's what we're all here for. Sorry, Robin. But just, Travis reached out to me when we were all doing really hard community groundwork. And he shared his expertise, his kind of knowledge of how to contact people, how some parts of politics and just connections work that we didn't necessarily know. He took our message to people, even when we were still talking about funding for operations for Columbia Pool from year to year. And he was part of that, when we, it helped that we stood outside Mayor Wheeler's campaign event with our signs and so on, but it also helped to have Travis take that message to people when he was meeting with them. And I'm just so appreciative that, that just even here tonight, I'm hearing some really concrete things. I'm hearing 3 weeks for the community engagement process to start. I'm hearing 3 years for that money to be spent. We've already heard about the 15 million. We know about the gaps, but I just, again, want to appreciate what Representative Nelson is doing for our community in terms of getting us to concrete, getting us to real, and really advocating and listening to us. So that's my belated post-introduction note of gratitude. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Margaret. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll start with, if there are any questions already in the chat, I'm just going to say them out loud so that then everybody can hear the question. And then we'll see who gets to answer the question or who can answer the question. Yeah, I think it'll be easier that way.
Parks that are not yet fully funded, not designed, will take an optimistic 3 to 4 years to complete. We could have 118 degrees next summer. That repairs to the current pool, if the pool at all. How can those pool repairs be justified? And the other questions are along the same lines about wanting to know money and why the money for.
Okay. So I'm going to repeat the question that we're just hearing from chat, which is a 2-part question and really meaty and juicy. So it could take a long time. The question said 3 to 4 years before there were a new facility. I believe it's actually quite a bit longer that might happen. And so what happens in the interim? And then the other part of that question is about the funds that are needed for the pool and why can't some of the funds be used to reopen Columbia Pool? And I know that was a poor paraphrase, but I'm wondering, Representative Nelson, do you want to take that first?
Sure. I'll speak to the funds that were allocated by the state. It was pretty clear to me after I made my budget request and started having conversations with my colleagues that the state was not going to invest in money in repairing Columbia Pool and building a new aquatic center. And when I was looking at what I really need to put my focus in advocating for, it was for the new project, hands down. So that's why the $15 million that was allocated by the state can't be used for repairs. There really was no appetite there at the state level.
The second part is actually trying to, we're sort of along the same lines, but it's clear.
Okay, and so Robin, do you want to also speak to that?
Sure. Hi, my name is Robin Johnson Craig, she, her, hers. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I just want to read one thing real quick. That's actually better there. I want to start off by thanking you for your advocacy on behalf of North Portland and behalf of Aquatic Service for North Portlanders. I know that you just don't advocate for pool access, but you're also working on a variety of other projects and items and issues to improve North Portland and Columbia Park. So thank you for all that you do. Our goal is ensuring the greatest number of North Portlanders have the most aquatics access with the lowest burden to entry, both in the immediate future and the longer term. Your insights on how we meet that goal will be the cornerstone of a broad community engagement process that we are now starting. We are partners in this work, and I thank you for all your support, and I look to you for your input and insights on the North Portland community to help with the new North Portland Aquatic Center. And also want to thank Representative Travis Nelson for this incredible effort that he has accomplished in such a short time period to give a major push for this project and to close this gap. So thank you from the City of Portland and Portland Parks. It's a huge win for us, so thank you. For providing access the 3 to 4 years before the pool opens, one thing that Portland Parks has learned in the past 2 years of COVID is that we know how to pivot, and we pivot a lot. We have served in the houseless crisis. We have served changing community centers to houseless shelters. We have turned them into cooling shelters. And so I think for the next 3 to 4 years, it will be a priority in our work to determine how we're going to continue to serve and to bridge the access for North Portlanders in our most dire moments in these climate events that have really raged us in the past 2 years. So I don't have a firm answer to that question right now, but it will be part of the efforts and part of the updates that we provide on the City of Portland, Portland Parks and Rec, North Portland Aquatic Center website. And we'll be getting that information to Rachel so that folks can access that and get online.
Let's take a question in the room. And I see Mary Margaret, do you have a question?
I do have a question, but I'll refer to
Okay. So just so folks on the Zoom know, I'm going to try to alternate. So don't worry if your questions are in the chat, we're not ignoring them. We'll come back and we have time. But I'm going to take a question from someone in the room, and I see Suzanne. So the question in the room is, does anyone have any idea what will happen to Columbia Pool, the structure, and when? I'm looking towards anybody to my left who might want to try to take that one. And that's a question that Friends of Columbia Park has as well, as many in the community.
I'll just say in conversations I've had with folks at the city, not Robin excluded from those conversations. When I've asked if Columbia Pool is going to reopen or if it, what the future of Columbia Pool looks like, the answer I get is that it's closed indefinitely. So that's the position that that the city has had and recent conversations that I've had. So I'll let Robin come up but I think a lot of that depends on where the final location is for the new aquatic center. Again, a lot of different sites are being looked at. That's going to involve, from everything I'm being told, a robust public process. But I'm not getting concrete answers. Well, we don't know. I don't think we're there yet. That's the impression I'm getting.
And just so folks on Zoom are hearing, the kind of continued question is, will the current Columbia pool be torn down? What will happen to it? And so, Robin, it looks like maybe you want to say a little bit more about that.
I feel your love for the Columbia Pool building, and I know that there are many a joyful moment, many a joyful years that members have spent recreating, communing with family, meeting new friends. At this time, we don't have an answer on what will happen. It needs additional study. We also we would need additional funding to pursue the investigation of the structural members and the additional studies that are needed to determine whether or not it's safe and what is needed for repairs. So that is my understanding of where the city is currently with the facility. And during the community engagement process for the North Portland Aquatic Center, I'm sure Columbia Park will be a site of interest, and that will be part of the community engagement process that we want to hear from you, and we want to understand your wants and needs, and that will be incorporated into the project so it's truly reflective of North Portland. Okay.
So I'm going to take one question from the chat, and then I know there's at least two folks in the room, and we'll get to Ms. Mariah and Mary Margaret in just a minute. Okay, so it sounds like, just to repeat what some of the questions in the chat, that there are questions about parking. So it seems like parking will obviously be a concern regardless of what site a new aquatic facility will be located at. And another question is, will the new aquatics facility be able to pay for itself, assuming through operations? Is there any comment that folks want to give about that?
Sure. Will the Aquatic Center be able to create enough revenue to provide funds to maintain the facility? Yes and no. So the question in the general arc of Portland Parks and Recreation, our recent levy that we've passed, we are looking at ways to minimize barriers to service. We realize that our dependence on the revenue from our community centers or aquatic centers or smaller community centers actually is a barrier to service. And so we are shifted our community centers to pay as you will, or pay as you can, pay what you can afford, because in reality, charging a revenue or charging fees for entry is actually not serving the people we're trying to serve. So that's a part of a bigger question about the business plan for these community centers and full service community centers and the indoor aquatic center. But right now, the funds that would be generated wouldn't be nearly enough to what it takes to run one of these operations.
Okay. Did you want to add to that, or? Okay. Parking? The question about parking. Sure. Go ahead.
Parking. We know that not everyone can walk, ride their bike, or a scooter, or get in an Uber to go where they need to go. Some people will be driving, and we know that will create impacts on a neighborhood. no matter where it's located. And so we will be looking very hard into traffic studies and making sure that we are providing adequate parking to provide ADA access and facility access for anyone who wants to drive to the facility. We will be going through a land use conditional use permit, and we will be basically wanting to make sure that we are not putting any undesired impacts on adjacent neighbors.
While you're there,
Oh, sorry.
the location, I think it sounds like, especially Columbia Park, Charles Gordon City.
So
Maybe we get back to some sort of.
sure. The question was, what are the 3 sites that we are looking at? Columbia Annex, Columbia Park, and Charles Jordan Community Center. At this time, we really want to look holistically at the entire peninsula of North Portland. Those 3 sites that were just named, Charles Jordan Community Center, which is located at University Park, Columbia Annex, and Columbia Park, are all open space zoned Portland Parks properties. So of course, those would be great sites because they're already in our inventory. But we want to make sure that this investment, as large as it is, it's a 50-year investment. So we want to make sure we get it right. We know that our community centers tend to be going up to the 100-year-old cycle. So we know that these are really more long-term than 50 years. They are almost 100-year investments. So we want to make sure that we get it in the right place. And we're going to be looking very hard for your feedback and your input to make sure that we're serving North Portland in the way that it wants to be served.
Okay, I'd like to, Ms. Mariah, did you have a question? I thought you had your hand up earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go with your question then, please.
My question has to do with the 2022 federal poverty guideline for families of 4. Does anyone federal poverty guideline for 22 for family of 4? You don't have the numbers, but. And I'm asking that question because as a nurse practitioner, medical field 1, high level wellness for our community and prevention. That's what that pool represents. But these people who have no access to relieve their stress, their diabetes, their many health conditions, who have already been denied access to health care, because of being uninsured and homeless, etc. And they're disproportionately represented in just about everything area of healthcare access, economics, social justice, etc., and racism. What is going to happen to those marginalized families in the next 2 years if they should not have access to a pool?
Yeah, really good
What's
question.
going to happen?
So I'm going to try to summarize your question, which is really important. So given that it's going to take several years, 2 to even more years to have a new aquatics center in place, what will happen to folks that are marginalized, who are below the federal poverty level, who relied on Columbia Pool for their wellness and their health? What will happen in the interim?
So thank you for asking that question, Mariah. I really appreciate it. What I will say is in the conversations I've had with the city, I want folks in this room and on Zoom to know that I'm advocating for as quick of a process as possible, with there being robust community input, because that's important when it comes to a new project. And conversations I've had with the city, there's going to be $1.5 million allocated in the next year to either help people get to other pools, to help people find some alternative to Columbia Pool. And that process is supposed to have robust public engagement as well, from everything I've been told. So that's what I'm hearing from the city is there's $1.5 million committed this year to help people seek alternatives to the access they would have had at Columbia Pool.
So you put the scholarship for those who cannot afford it?
It has,
People who cannot access it, they cannot afford it.
I, I hear you. And from what I've been told, that process and what that actually looks like has not been determined yet. The community is going to be engaged to determine how that $1.5 million will be allocated.
So let's have a question from Mary Margaret and then from Chris, and then we'll go to the Zoom for more questions.
So sorry, you're the last one to use the phrase, Travis, so I'm gonna be kind of giving you a hard time, but if I do a robust community process one more time, without actually seeing some robust community process, I appreciate y'all coming out here tonight. I really, really do. This is the first time I've heard some things that I've been asking about for a while. A few of us, before you were in office, you were there too. We met with the city. We heard about the robust community process then. We heard about the 1.5 million then. That was allocated in last fall's budget bump. And we haven't heard anything. And when I hear about going out and tabling and going to places where people are, this is work that people like myself and Gladys and other folks have been doing in the community for years now. And we haven't heard one peep from you saying, hey, let's organize a meeting together. Hey, can we, what are some of the groups that you've been talking to? Do you have some lists we can use? We want to help because we want to get that 8-year clock going. Couple years, several years. We're talking about 8 years. That's the number that you've given. And I appreciate nimble. We want to help you be nimble. We want to jumpstart your work. We don't want to be all a community, right? Advocates, they're one part, but we've been pretty inclusive in our advocacy. You're going to do the broad outreach that we don't have the capacity to do. I want to see you do that. I want to see you do that so bad, and I want to help you. And I don't want you to start from ground zero because I want you to know that people have done a lot of work, and we're just waiting for you to reach out to us so we can join in and get that going. In my mind at this point, there's kind of two lines of advocacy. One is full speed ahead to that 8-year clock. Let's get it going. Let's see what we can do. How can we help you get that going? I think Travis has done you a huge favor. Let's just keep moving on that. But the other is Columbia Pool itself. That 8-year gap is 2 generations of children. It's 2 generations of elders without access. And 1.5 million, that is a drop in the bucket. So that's another thing. We can't tell you what to do with that 1.5 million, but you have to start asking and we have to start talking about it. Because a lot of people are going to say, put some of that money into Columbia Pool. And I don't personally know that that's the answer. But I know that that's the question. That's what a lot of people want. What we hear from Commissioner Rubio's office is, no, not going to do it. Commissioner Rubio's made that decision. She's not going to do it. And y'all need to come out in the community and say that a little more. You need to explain why a little more. I know you feel like you have, but you haven't.
So
We need a pool while we're waiting.
Yeah. And so I just,
Another question, but I guess the question is, can you share an engagement plan of some kind so we can give you some feedback? So we can say, hey, here's where we've had success connecting with people. Oh, have you talked to the ROTC folks at the University of Portland? Have you talked to the retired principal over at Rosa Parks Elementary? Like, how can we help with all the lists, all the work that we've done? I think Gladys alone talked to at least 2,000 people. We have 1,500 on our list. So how can we help?
So just to summarize for people on Zoom, Mary Margaret, next time, please come up here because everyone needs to hear what you're saying. And I'm only going to very poorly summarize it, but we want the clock of community engagement to start ticking now along that 8-year timeline that it's going to take to get a pool in place. And the community, especially a few really key people, have been doing community engagement on the ground free of charge for several years. Gladys and Mary Margaret really leading that up. And so we want to work with the city to do that. We need to be relied on and called on to help do that. And we want to see robust, air quotes, robust community engagement really happen because we've been hearing for years that will be part of the process. And we haven't really seen that happen. We've been doing that. Was that okay? So we want to just hear a little rebuttal to that. Come on up.
No, thank you for that, Mary Margaret. And I know that's how folks in this room have been feeling. I will say the last conversation I had with a bunch of folks from the city was this morning, and they have assured me that this is something that we will see by the end of this month or next month. We will start to see that robust engagement. Like I told you all, There's going to be a town hall with myself, Senator Frederick, Representative Sanchez, in which the city will have a table there. There's a website that's supposed to be up, I believe, by within the next 60 days-ish, that will have more information. So I have been pushing them, right? I look at this $15 million as a jumpstart that the city really wasn't counting on having prior to me going to the state and saying, hey, we need this money to get going. So I'm everything I'm being told, they are ready to start, and we should start seeing meaningful action and a meaningful response within the next 30 days, is what I'm being told.
What kind of outreach to the community who are going to be affected by your decision is being made? So they are included. The community that's going to be affected.
Well, when you say my decision, what do you mean?
The community is those who are going to be utilizing the pool.
Right.
If they're not included at the ground level with your planning, it's almost like the person riding in on the white horse telling them what to do. They need to be included to be successful.
Yeah, so I hear you, and I just want to be clear. While I have oversight, while I am an advocate, I am your state representative, I got funds from the state to the city for this specific project, and those who will actually be executing the project will not be including me, although I will be an advocate and I will do my best to provide oversight. Robin?
Hi. You're right. And you're right. And I hear you. The robust, and as much as I kind of cringe when I hear the word robust is what I'm hearing, you're cringe as well. Robust means that you are our partners. Robust means that we are going to do everything that we can to make sure that we hear from everyone and reach everyone with this process. I am so impressed with the community engagement team at Portland Parks, the links that they go to make sure that every voice is heard. I just had a conversation this morning about starting the conversation about how many languages are we going to translate all the materials into to make sure that we're reaching all community members. What you mentioned in the initial, your initial statement is, yes, we need you. We need all your community engagement. We need your partners, your relationships, your friends, your neighbors, your everyone that's supported you or you supported during COVID, because you really are who we're trying to serve. So we need you to serve you. We are here to serve you and make sure that this pool represents what you want and what you need. And so that community engagement team, we have been working very hard to put a community engagement plan together. We haven't built a center of this size since the early 90s. This is a big lift for the Bureau. We have been working nonstop to make this community engagement plan and to make it true to partnership and make sure that we are going to the extents needed to make sure that we are listening to all the voices. One of the first steps in that community partnership will be interviews. And they're looking to do stakeholder interviews to reach out to you to find out who should we be talking to. Those interviews start more interviews. So a lot of conversations will be starting very soon so that one-on-one, we're listening to each and every one of you.
Thanks, Robin. I think what I'll say is the community is watching and the community is waiting, and we're standing and ready to see what happens with the community engagement process. There are a lot of stakeholders in the community, so if stakeholder interviews are happening, again, many of us here who have been doing that community engagement can turn you on to key people in the community who can help you understand. So we will be standing, watching, and waiting. And I'm going to take one more question in the room here and then go to chat. And I think, Chris, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you. Thank you both for being here tonight. It's late and it's really the question I have is based on the fact that we don't have a pool right now. The reason we don't have 2008 study that said to repair the roof, and another report in 2019 saying, now really needs to be replaced. With no full access, and just feels a lot like a capital improvement project for mismanagement of appropriate assets. According to Portland Parks, in 2008, that pool was listed as in very good condition in 2008. So how would you, in front of us, we more effectively advocate for facilities funding? Because back to the question earlier about being able to afford putting communities like ours in this position. And with the general fund, council for allocating the parks. This is a long-standing issue, and this is clearly what we need to solve, because right now all we're talking around is capital project solutions, a maintenance mistake. How should we be advocating? Tell us how we can be effective, because we want to be partner, we want to help, we want to construct. We know that you are
So question from Chris Forney here in the room, who is the lead on the facilities task force that some of you might be aware of, produced a report, independent report of Columbia Pool. And the question is really, what should we be doing as a community if we want to advocate for Columbia Pool that has been mismanaged? We've known since 2008 that it needed a new roof, and yet the maintenance hasn't happened. And so, and I'm not capturing that exactly right, but what advice would you give to us about that kind of advocacy?
My advice to you would be to do all that you can to change minds. I mean, at this point, Columbia Pool is low on the priority list when it comes to the Parks Department. And it's really in Commissioner Rubio's wheelhouse. And so I would tell you to advocate, continue to call, email, put pressure on her. I've asked again about Columbia Pool, and the responses I've gotten today have been that it's closed indefinitely, but things can change. But again, it will have to be moved up in the priority list of the commissioner if that's going to happen, and there are no, of course, guarantees that that will be the case. I'd love to see a new aquatic center in Columbia Pool. I think that's the ideal outcome, but that's not currently the city's position, and I don't see it changing unless reopening Columbia Pool and investing in it is moved up in the priority list.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, Robin, do you have any thing to add to that?
In the fall of 2019, Portland Parks went to City Council with the Sustainable Futures work session. And at the time, Commissioner Nick Fish was still alive and commissioner, and pushed Portland Parks to achieve a sustainable, maintainable, operable budget for our, I want to say, millions of assets that we have in our portfolio. At this time, the internal staff is working very hard, and we were, so back up, City Council at that time overwhelmingly supported Portland Parks to not just keep baseline, but to actually push forward and to achieve a maintainable, sustainable future for the Bureau that did not rely on general fund and did not rely on the revenue from our community centers in order to fund our rec staff doing swim lessons, for example. So right now, Portland Parks is working through that process and looking at all the different options for a sustainable future. And I don't have an answer right now on what that potentially may look like as far as what type of financial form that might take physical form. We did. We passed the levy, which was fantastic. And that was the one big first step towards providing a sustainable future. So thank you, Portland voters, for passing the levy. That was huge. And that has provided a continuous service for recreation and land stewardship to provide the necessary services that are paramount for our parks. So I'm hoping that there is going to be new information coming soon. And as far as advocacy, I think your advocacy for this project, I speak as the capital project manager, your advocacy for this project is paramount for the success of the project. And the 8 years that Mary Margaret referenced in her earlier comment, I just wanted to speak to that as well. Right now, I have a baseline estimate of 5 to 7 years. These projects are complex. They take a long time. It's not until I have the consultant team on board, hopefully by the end of July, that I'll have a better estimate for timing. And we will be pushing the design team to provide as much efficiencies as possible to make sure that we can deliver as soon as possible. I also just today met with BDS, the Bureau of Development Services, and was assigned a process manager, which is a pretty significant task, to have a major project assigned to a BDS person to help with the land use permitting and the whole permitting process. So they were actually surprised because normally they don't get this much advance notice. So we already have a process manager on board. We are pushing forward and making things happen.
Okay, thank you, Robin. I just want to check with Angie. Is there a question in the chat that we can throw out there? Okay, so we have a lot of comments in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in and communicating with us and with each other. We are going to save the chat and share it out with everybody, just so you know. You'll be able to access that later. And just want to pause and make sure if there is a question from the chat.
There are several, they're just trying to think they're very similar to what we've heard so far.
Okay. So I'm going to go to a question in the room, and I think that Mark Kirchmeier in the back, did you have a question? And then we'll go to Gladys.
Ask legislative council and state for a legal opinion next January to amend the $15 million so that mechanism can be amended and money can be used for repairs.
So the question for Zoom, so you can just hear that, is what Representative Nelson, would you be willing to go back to the next long session and ask if the legislation could be amended so that the funding that you just allocated could be put towards a new project or keyword improvements to existing facility?
So I hate to do this, but I really did just get here. I haven't even been elected to my first full term yet. I've been appointed. That said, I'm definitely willing to take constituent feedback to legislative council. I will just reiterate that when I was making this request, when I was having conversations with folks in Ways and Means, with the Speaker of the House, it was made pretty clear to me that the state did not want to invest funds into a 100-year-old structure that was in need of improvements. They really wanted to invest the funds into something new. But I'm more than willing to take the question back. If you would send an email to my office or touch base with Amy Beth, my staffer here, we can look at how we can make that happen. That would be great. Thank you.
I think Gladys actually had a question. Yes, and then we'll go to Miss Mariah.
In the past, the pool needed to be are we talking about only an aquatic center? Or would this be a full community center? Because at one time, they talked about attaching it to Charles. Because then there'd be a community center, have one supervisor over both, and that would cut out the supervisor needed at the separate pool. So are we talking about a full community center or just an aquatic?
Okay, and so for those of you on Zoom, the question is about, can we hear more about what we mean by an aquatics center? Does that mean a full community center with a pool plus other amenities, or is it just the pool and the aquatics feature? There's been some talk in the past about Charles Jordan having a pool added on, but what does this mean? So Robin, do you have some ideas?
Sure. Full-service community centers, as defined by the Parks Vision Plan 2020, defines a full-service community center as an indoor pool, recreation facilities, and art facilities or art classrooms. We have a pretty amazing community center to date at Charles Jordan. It has the most incredible gym facility in our entire system. It is not considered or defined as a full-service community center because it doesn't have an indoor pool. When you get into looking at indoor pool facilities, we don't have a standalone indoor pool facility in the city of Portland and Portland Parks. Other cities like the city of Seattle only have separated community centers from indoor facilities. There is some merit in having them separate, and there's merit in having them combined. So that would be part of the community outreach and engagement process, one, from the design team perspective, to look at the technical information of why you would choose a site over another, but also getting the community feedback to understand what the community wants in the programming for the new facility. Most likely, the new facility would be comparable in its pool experience that we have at Southwest Community Center or East Portland Community Center. So lap swimming, for free swim and or lap swim, zero entry pool with the lazy river and the slide and the toddler slide, all user restrooms, all user locker rooms, the whirlpool area. There has been questions about the programming and what it might be, and that would be really getting that vital information from PP&R recreation staff that manages and programs our facilities, but also from the community on the types of programming that you want to see. I am assuming there would most likely be offices, a check-in desk, staff areas, also possible classrooms and meeting rooms so that we can support community needs. So we don't have that defined yet. That's going to be part of the project.
But if it's at a certain site, like Charles Jordan already has, and it would be one price to build. If it's at another site like the Ant, would you have to build the community center? The price amount there?
It's complicated. I'll start there. It's complicated. When I originally started looking at the sites, we know that Charles Jordan Community Center is on an odd shaped site. It's kind of a dumbbell, right? It has a pinch point where the parking lot exists currently. When you actually do your due diligence and actually look at the site, there are a number of complicating factors to that site, such as sewer easements and active sewer main lines that crisscross in 8 different locations in that site, right where you would want to attach a community center. There's also a significant, I'll just share tonight, there's a significant Union Pacific Railroad tunnel that starts at US 30 and goes through the west.
I don't think that's new to any of us.
Okay, well, it runs through all 3 sites. So it's on the west side. It's between the elementary school and Charles Jordan Community Center. It runs in the middle of Columbia Park, a little to the east, and it runs on this western edge on Columbia Annex. So there really isn't a site that's just free and clear and an easy site. The other thing, the question is, the cost. When you look at our existing building code, and it's called Title 33 in our system for our land use, when you actually look at what's required for a building permit, the Charles Jordan site, because we have an existing facility, though that existing facility similar to this, has things that probably need improvement and don't pass the current building code requirements. And so by touching the site, you've actually, you've started the building process. And so suddenly you have a lot of non-conforming upgrades is what they're called. When they don't conform or don't meet present code, you have to make sure that they are meeting code.
Thank you, Robin. Ms. Mariah, did you have another question? And then Mary Margaret.
The last question has to do with filling the gap. Do you have funding streams that have identified themselves being supported already, or are you still working on that part?
Great, good question. So we know that there's still a big gap in funding needed to get this new aquatics center over the line, even if it does take 8 years. So do we have ideas about where that funding would be coming from?
So I've asked this question a couple times, and the answer I have gotten is no. At this point, the city does not know where they're going to get that additional funding. There's some ideas, but there's no plan for bridging that. There's no concrete plan for bridging that gap at this time.
All right, just so you don't have to repeat it again, Rachel. So I just appreciate so much just your candidness as you talk about the sites and your analysis. I will say, you know, the very first meeting we finally got with the city, somebody said, you know, and I was kind of embarrassed to ask the question, frankly, you know, but do you know that there's a railroad tunnel under the peninsula? And we said, oh yeah, we know all about that. We know all about that. So I appreciate you talking about not just the obstacle that the railroad tunnel provides, but all the other obstacles. And I want to say, you know, as somebody who's lived in Portsmouth for a long, long time, you know, who's really connected to the, you know, the swim program at Rosa Parks Elementary, to the elders at Trenton Terrace, you know, the real need, the community needs that have been met at Columbia Pool, you know, maybe in kind of a half-assed way sometimes, you know, not as glorious as it could be, but really met in a lot of really concrete ways. I've been really excited about the idea of a full-service aquatic center that is really connected to that community at New Columbia. My concern now is that by the time you look at all the factors to do something here on the North Portland Peninsula, including I've heard some folks, you know, who are, you know, in the competitive swimming world talk about just the size of a facility that they would want and kind of do an overlay, an acreage overlay on the site and say, you know, what we're talking about is huge, you know, and I want those kids at Roosevelt, and I want the swim team there to have a great competitive space. Anyway, you know, you don't have to respond. I guess this is a statement, but my real concern in my gut is that we're not going to have Columbia Pool, and we're not going to have a fantastic aquatic center either. That St. John's is going to have a great aquatic center. You know, I don't know, we're going to put it out at Terminal 4 or something like that. I don't know, you know, and we're not going to have anything, you know, and we've already talked about, you know, the kids at Rosa Parks and that swim program, they can't lose the instructional time to bus to Matt Dishman, last I heard. I mean, maybe there's been PPS is weird, but you know, so that's, I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I've had my head in this for a long time. I've been really excited about the vision for the aquatic center. I've encouraged you to share that. I can get behind that, but what I can't get behind is an aquatic center way over there and nothing here. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's another reason for why I just, you know, we want to talk about the community engagement, but we also want to hear what you're learning about these sites. So I just appreciate you sharing about the sewer lines and all that. And, you know, I know your job's complicated, but that's why we really want to be having this dialogue, because in the past, there's just been a lot of, it's felt cagey. So thanks.
Thanks, Mary Margaret. I'm with you. I want to say two things. One is I am with you. I've been feeling more and more pessimistic about something actually happening. And I used to be the one that was the eternal optimist about this. And I don't have it anymore. And from the Friends of Columbia Park perspective, we are part of the kind of, you know, the coalition that has waxed and waned over time to really be behind North Portland, get North Portland swimming. But our focus is really what's happening in this park And many questions already have been around what is going to happen to Columbia Pool, like whether we can advocate enough to get it open temporarily or not is a really important question. It's vacant. It has been vacant for a long time. It will continue to be vacant. And we all know that something vacant in a park is not a good thing for the community. So it's a very related but separate issue. And I know that Suzanne asked that question too. So I just want to raise that's one of our concerns. And we want to get people swimming. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is we know that there are quite a few questions in the chat and there's chit chat back and forth. And what we're going to do is give the questions to the city of Portland so that you can take your time as part of the community engagement process, perhaps to start answering some of the questions. There just seems to be quite a lot that we're not going to be able to really field right now. And apologies for those of you online that we can't do that right now, but we commit to getting those questions to the city so that we can then publish them along with some answers on our website. Are there any other questions or comments in the room? I want to have certainly Representative Nelson come up again. And if anybody else has questions, I'm going to just open the mic up. It might be easier if you come up. But Representative Nelson, why don't you first?
My chief of staff, Amy Beth, brought something to my attention. So the city did tell our office that in April, there will be a park event and there will be 3 different tables that the city will have. One will be information about Columbia Pool. 2 will be the second one will be information about the new plan and project advisory committee application process. And the third table will be gathering feedback on how to spend the $1.5 million on interim aquatic service. There will be a mailer that goes out to everyone who lives within a 3-mile radius of the pool, according to folks at the city. What's that? In April. Oh, do you have it, Amy Beth? Thank you. Town Hall with myself, Representative Sanchez, and Senator Frederick will be May 7th at the Roosevelt High School gym. And the city will have a table there related to Columbia Pool. And it's going to be at what time? 10 a.m. Thank you, Amy Beth.
Okay, and then Mary Margaret, did you ask though for the dates of the parks session, the park event to be repeated? Did we hear a date? We did. Oh, we didn't hear a date. Okay. Okay. That's a great. So just want to repeat what we heard from the city via Representative Nelson, that in April there will be a park event that has a 3-pronged purpose. And I don't know if it's going to be in Columbia Park. That would be a great thing for Friends of Columbia Park to know. So please let us know. We could help by hosting it inside or by promoting it via our channels, and also encourage our partners at the Portsmouth Neighborhood Association or the what will no longer be called Save Columbia Pool. But I want Mary Margaret to talk about kind of the morphing of Save Columbia Pool and what that's moving into. But we have communication channels as well. So if there's an event in April, that would be one way to start partnering with the community. Any other questions from folks in the room?
Just on your advisory committee, are they composed of people from the community reflecting ethnicity as well as socioeconomic status?
Yes, great question. So the question is about, for the Community Advisory Council, which was one of the 3 things we heard this event in the park was going to be focused on. Tell us more about the advisory committee and the composition of that.
So I think this is one of the questions that will be posted to the website and in full detail and more information than I have. I'm not on the community engagement team, and they're much better speakers and more articulate about their community outreach methods. My understanding, the Public Advisory Committee will be a spectrum of members of the North Portland community, making sure that we have voices from all different ages, all different ethnicities, all different careers, professions, all different levels of economic status, to make sure that we are truly representing all the different voices that are here in North Portland. Part of that is getting to know the stakeholders, and through that stakeholder interview process, we will get more feedback of, you know, you need to talk to this person, or did you know this person down the street, or did you know that the gym teacher here actually, you know, taught swim lessons, or, you know, those types of conversations really help to create that, making sure that we bridge and make sure that we're meeting all those different folks that live here. Part of that public advisory committee makeup goes through the director and is approved by the commissioner. So that is a process that happens within parks.
Okay, it's about 7:45. I just want to alert people to time in case you have to be somewhere else. And I want to make sure that we can also get folks on their way for the rest of their evening. But before we do that, I want to make sure there aren't any more questions. And I'm wondering, Mary Margaret, if you could say a little bit about, you sent out a newsletter recently, and there's going to be kind of a name morphing of the community group that's been advocating for a long time. And I think that's important to share with folks on Zoom and here in the room.
Well, I was actually hoping to sell the URL to the city for a tidy profit. So we changed it to swimnorth.org just because we've been using Save Columbia Pool for so long, and the conversation is obviously so much bigger than Columbia Pool. I'll say, you know, in my heart, I really want to transition from doing a lot of community advocacy work during my free hours to having a couple great interviews with some paid community organizers working for the city and handing a bunch of stuff over. That doesn't mean that we'll lose our advocacy voice and our advocacy channels. We're still going to want to be, you know, a lot of us are still going to want to be outside the tent pissing in, you know, but as much as possible, we want to work with you and, you know, get some of those communication channels passed over. But anyway, we still have the newsletter. We have the Facebook page. Facebook page is still Save Columbia Pool. And there's, you know, that's a good place to go for sort of ongoing conversations, interactive conversations. And then the newsletter is now Swim North. We need a new logo, but the old one is so good. And I have so many lawn signs left. So who knows, but you know, there's still space, I think a lot of space for the conversation around saving Columbia Pool. And so I think that's why, you know, we have always talked about coming together as a coalition around the goal of uninterrupted access to year-round aquatics programming on the North Portland Peninsula. And I got to thank you. Yeah, Representative Nelson's pretty good at saying it too now, so I'm glad. And so, yeah, so there's still a lot of conversation for us to have in the community about what we want to advocate for. Still lots of space to be advocating for some different things too. And I'm really looking forward to the city coming in, mediating some of those conversations, catching some of the folks that we don't have time to. You know, I mean, you talk about, we translated our stuff into 6 different languages. You know, we figured out what languages are being spoke down at Rosa Parks Elementary. You know, I'm really excited for you to do that now. So, but yeah, swimnorth.org. People wanted it to be keep North Portland swimming, which it will be at some point, but right now it's get North Portland swimming. So, you know, shorter URL too.
Okay, so thanks, Mary Margaret. For folks in the chat have been echoing for Representative Nelson, really a big thank you for taking the risk to come out here and share this information with us. So I want to echo that, you know, folks are really recognizing that you're stepping out, and we appreciate that on behalf of our community. And with that, I think we'll end. Again, we're Friends of Columbia Park here in the cottage in North Portland. And if you're not already a friend, please go to focp.org and become a friend, and we can work together. We'll sign off on Zoom, and then the rest of us here in the room can wear our masks and continue to engage, wear our masks if we want to, and continue to engage. Did you want to say anything in closing, or it's up to you? Don't want to.
I'll just say thank you once again for coming out and showing up on Zoom. Your advocacy is much appreciated, and I'm glad I could come out here and join you all this evening. I'll just say one thing is for sure: everybody in Salem knows about this pool now. When I got the 15 million, the other members of the House of Representatives were coming to me and were like, how did you get this? Because most of the asks were for 2 million, 1 million, 500,000, 3 million. So I'm glad that I could get the commitment that we got for this $15 million. And if you need anything from my office, feel free to reach out. Most of you are probably already getting my newsletter. But for those of you in the district, if you're not getting the newsletter, go to my legislative webpage and sign up for it. We're routinely putting out information, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep the community informed about the things that are happening in Salem. So thank you so much. So have a good night.